The title of this message this morning is The Gift of a Lifeline. The Gift of a Lifeline. The Thanksgiving holiday is behind us, and Christmas season has begun. This season is also referred to as the Advent season. It is a time of expectant waiting and preparation for the celebration of the Nativity, the coming of Jesus Christ. And so we celebrate his birth and expectantly wait for his return. The Christmas season can be and often is tough for some. They find themselves in barren territory, in a season of despair. Their resources have dried up, and it seems there is no way they can reach out to anyone, or there just doesn't seem anyone that they can reach out to who understands or who can help them. Right about now, they can use a lifeline. Hagar and her son are two of the individuals in our text. Two others are Abram and Sarai. God eventually changes their names to Abraham and Sarah. Our text picks up with Hagar and her son, who find themselves in a barren wilderness and their resources used up. They have been evicted from the place they know as home. An eviction is not something that is welcomed or even pleasant. It is the removal of one or more persons from another's property. In the time we live, eviction notices are given to a tenant with the demand to vacate the property within 30 days, 7 days, or even 5. One moment, Hagar and her son are living comfortably in Abraham's tent, and the next, they are being told to leave. Last night, they had a home. This morning, they don't. They find themselves in a terrible situation, not knowing where they will lay their heads tonight, tomorrow, or even next week. This wasn't the first time Hagar would find herself in the desert. When she was pregnant with Ishmael, things in Abraham's tent got a little heated and was no longer bearable for her. And so she ran away. It was a situation that was not of her own doing. Nevertheless, she couldn't take it anymore. Abraham was married to Sarah, and they were well up in age and childless. This posed a dual problem for them, one of shame at being barren and without children. And the other problem for them was trying to figure out who would inherit all that God had promised to Abraham and all that God had blessed Abraham with. You see, Abraham had found favor with God because of his faithfulness and obedience to God. He had left his country and traveled to a territory inhabited by the Canaanites. There, God promised that land to Abraham and to his offspring. God told him that he would make his offspring as numerous as the dust of the earth, a number too great to count. As time went on, Abraham and his wife grew older and remained childless. So Abraham considered the option of adopting one of his servants to be the heir and guardian of his estate. After this, Sarah came up with a plan of her own, and she presented it to Abraham, her husband. She told him, "Take Hagar, my maidservant, as your wife. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Now notice she says, "Perhaps I can build a family through her." Well, Abraham did just what Sarah said. So Hagar conceived, and she began to despise Sarah, her mistress. You know, she got a little haughty. She got arrogant. She got puffed up, okay? At this point, Sarah probably couldn't tell her anything. I can hear Sarah saying, I may have given you my husband, but you're still my maidservant. Don't get it twisted. And so Sarah began mistreating Hagar. Hagar couldn't take it anymore, and she ran away. The angel of the Lord found Hagar in the desert, and after questioning her, the angel told her to return to her mistress and submit. Go back and get along with her. Don't compete with her. The angel of the Lord also made a promise to Hagar. In part, this promise was like the one made to Abraham. He told Hagar that her descendants, too, would be too numerous to count. The world's first ultrasound was performed right there in the desert. The angel of the Lord confirmed that Hagar was pregnant and told her that she was having a son. Name him Ishmael, the angel said, because the Lord has heard your misery. As time went on, Ishmael was born, and by that time, Abraham was 86 years old. But even more time went on. Abraham turned 100. Sarah is 90. And then God does something. He fulfills the promise that he had made to Abraham and to Sarah, that they would have a son. So Sarah became pregnant, and she gave birth to this promised son. And they named him Isaac. When Isaac was about 2 or 3 years old and he was weaned from his mother, Abraham gave this great feast. Sarah caught Ishmael mocking Isaac, and she told Abraham that Hagar and her child had to go. She didn't intend for Ishmael to share in her son's inheritance. Abraham was deeply grieved, but the Lord told him not to be worried. Do what Sarah says. I've got this. It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Ishmael will be taken care of because he is your offspring. We worry about some things when we shouldn't. We are the offspring of Abraham, God's blessing, and he promises to take care of us. So Hagar and Ishmael were evicted. It wasn't a 30-day eviction. It wasn't 7 days, not even 5. It was immediate. Early the next morning, Abraham sent Hagar away with some bread and a bottle of water, and Ishmael on her shoulder. Now, if this was a meme, that is a picture with words posted on your Facebook page, your text response might be the letters SMH, an acrostic standing for shaking my head. When I first heard this story, it was a shaking my head moment for me. Hagar is going to need the gift of a lifeline, someone to come to her rescue, to save her and her son. Now, the reason for their eviction may not stand up in a court of law today. Ishmael mocked her son. Really? That's what brothers do. Regardless of the arguments against their eviction, Hagar and Ishmael find themselves homeless. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations that don't seem to make sense in the moment. You did all that you could do. You did your best, but it just didn't seem to be enough. Not only were they not given time and opportunity to work out their housing situation after learning they had to leave Abraham's, but Hagar and Ishmael were sent away with only meager provisions. Scripture says Abraham took food and a skin of water. The King James translation says it was some bread and a bottle of water. And Abraham gave it to her, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. Talk about a heavy burden to bear. Ishmael, although a boy, he's not a little boy. He is in his teens. He's about 16 or 17 years old. And that's a little unimaginable, it would seem, to be put on his mother's shoulder for even a moment. But metaphorically, our shoulders are where burdens are placed. This is where your burdens rest, on your shoulders. In Matthew 23:4, Jesus is quoted as saying, "The Pharisees tie up heavy burdens and lay them on men's shoulders." And he's not talking about physical burdens, but spiritual burdens, the burdens of legalism, all of those requirements for the Jews, what you can do, what you can't do, above and beyond what God was asking.